A very good afternoon, Africa and beyond viewers, and a very good afternoon, Zimbabwe, Africa, and the world. And welcome to Africa and Beyond Television Network. My name is Ronald Wekwamakusha, and today we want to talk about a very important matter, a very important issue, which has been raised by Dr. Walter Mzembi, the former Minister of Tourism in the nation of Zimbabwe. And let us take a look onto this issue. We have seen Ukraine through the United Nations. They held an emergency voting program, which was held, and several countries voted, and we had 143 countries which voted in favor of Ukraine, and we had 35 countries which abstained, and also 5 countries which voted against Ukraine. So the situation is in Ukraine is so dire and is so difficult. Russia is trying to annex Ukraine and is trying to take away some parts of Ukraine, which they have partially captured. And this matter was put before the United Nations, and the agenda was to defend the territorial integrity of Ukraine and defending the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. So Dr. Mzembi here is raising this issue and saying, when are we going to have a true position as African nations on anything? We are beholden to the Chinese and Russians because of debt and the infrastructure they've built. Whilst we also look up to the Western institutions for cash flow, IMF, World Bank, etc. So the situation of Africa is that if you look onto the issue of infrastructure, China is coming with infrastructure, doing A, B, C, D. If you look in the country of Zimbabwe, they built a parliament which they say they've donated, but they've tied Zimbabwe to an extent where Zimbabwe cannot make its own decision because Zimbabwe is relying on China on certain things. So he went on to say we have lost the ability to call right or wrong, with the exception of Zambia and a few. The other day, I saw Hakainde Hichilema upload sign, which is China, support. But when he is called upon to do the right thing for Zambia, he stands up to the principle. China abstained because it will need Russia support on Taiwan. We follow, but Africa potentially has many cases of secession arising out of Berlin Conference, artificial borders themselves, colonial. What precedent are we setting for ourselves? So the issue being raised by Dr. Mzembi is an issue which we cannot ignore, in the sense that Africa is relying on China, and Africa is relying on Western institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, etc. But what is going to affect us is that when we are annexed, who is going to assist us? Who is going to help us? Is China going to rescue us? Is Russia going to rescue us? Because they have their own problems, they have their own difficulties and their own challenges. So let us give us an example. You could see we have South Africa annexing Zimbabwe. Who is going to stand with Zimbabwe under such circumstances or under such experiences? That is a very important question to ask. And if we are to look on the issue, yakafanana Morocco, it is annexing this other small, very small, tiny country there, and we have had this problem for a very long time, and this problem has never been resolved up to this day. It's because of Africa's failure to have one common goal and one common position on these very important issues. Look at the African Union. They cannot stand together. They cannot talk together. They cannot do anything together as a body. They wait for other countries to decide for them. So even if they meet as heads of African Union, they cannot go to any summit with one position. That is the reason why you have seen Africa not being included in the United Nations Security Council. So when are we going to have a united Africa, Africa which is so effective, Africa which can confront Europe, which can confront China, Russia, and also America? That is the kind of Africa we need. Because if you look on Africa, we does have our oil, we have all minerals, we have human resources, everything we have it, but we are behind. And the question is, why are we so behind? It's because Africa itself is not united. Africa itself is led by people who cannot make proper decisions, people who cannot make decisions which are going to help their own people. They don't have a position of their own. They rely on other countries, they rely on other continents for everything and anything. So this is a very important discussion we need to have as Africans, because it affects us each and every time, each and every day. And I don't know, as an African, what do you think should be done? What do you think can be done to make sure that Africa is not tied up to debt? Because one day tichamuka, Africa yatorwa nechina, Africa yatorwa nerussia because of debt, and nobody is going to rescue us, nobody is going to stand with us because of our previous position, because macountries ane potential yekutibatsira vanenge vasingachakwanisa kutibatsira. So you see kuti Africa is now being recolonized by China and by Russia, and these are so aggressive countries. If you look on what they are doing on Ukraine, and if you look on what they are doing on Taiwan, you would see kuti they've become modern day colonizers of other countries, and they do it without remorse, they do it without regret, and they don't even care, and they will kill for them to occupy those countries or those places. Look at Ukraine. A lot of people have died, a lot of people have been injured, some of the some have been displaced because of Russia's aggression on Ukraine. So I don't know your take as Africans, but let us have a discussion about this issue. When are we going to have African leaders who are going to stand up to the truth? African leaders who are not going to be influenced by any other country, but who are going to be influenced by their own decisions from their African Union bodies. And that is a very important issue and a very important discussion to have. Signing out, my name is Ronald Wekwamakusha. Let us meet in other episodes.